Welcome to the Action Item Podcast. Meet your hosts, Trevor Hunter and Leo Lopez. They dive into their personal experiences and client stories, discussing hurdles, struggles, and successes. And at the end of each show, you'll get a simple action item that you can put in play today to make a real impact on your business.
Hi, everybody. This is Leo Lopez at the Action Item Podcast, and I am here with
Trevor Hunter. How are you guys doing?
And so, everybody, welcome back. Today's episode, we're going to talk about something that is, has unfortunately been a little bit of a stigma or not really talked about openly. I mean, it's getting better, but today's episode, we're going to talk about mental health for the entrepreneur and a founder's mindset. So, but before we dive into today's topics, we're going to start off with Trevor's story that kind of inspired today's episode. So I'll let you take it away.
Well, I know that I'm a little rough around the edges. So when it comes to mental health, that's not something that's typically in my vocabulary. But mindset is very much so. And I get the two playing one and one. I don't know why in my head I kind of feel like mental health is a softer thing than having a solid mindset. It's the same damn thing in reality, right?
Right.
But so I've got a client that we just had a massive hurricane, and in Western Carolina, it's tornado hell. I just got power back last Saturday. So he's a land management, runs excavators, skid steers, that kind of thing, and he does home sites. He builds, clears off property where they're going to build a home, builds roads, driveways, etc. After all the devastation that's happened here, he's been doing cleanup, getting trees off houses. I mean, using the excavator, picks up trees off houses and stuff like that and cleaning up. He's not a volunteer. He's charging, but he's still helping people get their lives sorted out, getting shit back to a good place. Well, he's bought another truck, a big Ram 5500. He's bought 2 excavators, a skid steer. He has more equipment than he had. And the nature of his previous work was he would go from job site to job site. So his equipment would be on the job site. So they might be there for a week clearing a plot of land for a house. And when that was done, they'd move the equipment to the next job site. So he doesn't have a storage place for his equipment. As you can imagine, these cleanup jobs are a much shorter time span, so at nighttime, this equipment's been coming to his house, which does reside in the city limits. So suddenly, There's these 3 big-ass dualies parked in his driveway with gooseneck trailers and excavators and skid steers and a big excavator in his driveway, or in his yard, in his driveway. To be unfair, it does look not the greatest, but we're trying to find him a lot so that he can gravel it, throw a fence up, and park his stuff. But he's just having to make do with what he can right now. And a neighbor complained about it, so of course the city sends him a letter this morning. He calls me and is livid. He is so mad. He's like, I'm just out here trying to make a living. Why can't they just let me be? And he was just mad, like C-red, blackout type anger.
And does he know this neighbor?
Yes. Well, they have a vehicle in their yard that also is a builder. They're a home builder, so they have a vinyled up truck in their driveway as well. So it's a bit ironic, but I don't know. We're in Western North Carolina, and they are an import from somewhere else. Typically around here, nobody's going to really say much for a guy who's trying to make a living, especially considering the situation. Like, he's lived there for years. It's not been a problem before. Suddenly something's different. It's not hard to figure out, but this is a implant. Is that a good term? An implant?
Transplant?
Transplant
from another state?
Yeah, from up north. Nothing against New Yorkers or Northerners. I don't know that they're from New York, but I know they're not from here.
Well, if you've ever been to North Carolina, you'll maybe see 3 out of 10 plates are actual North Carolina plates. All the other plates are for, especially in Charlotte, at least that's what I saw. But now, how is this? I do want to dive into this because, I mean, obviously he's upset, and But I guess it's against city code for you to have two dualies parked in your driveway, or what's?
I don't know. I had to talk him off. I had to help get his mind back right on that was kind of the motivation of this podcast. He was told a whole bunch of things on the phone, and then he received a letter. And I told him, I said, basically take every single thing you were told on the phone and throw that away because that's hearsay, and then worry about what's on paper. And what was on paper, he doesn't know yet because he hasn't been home to see it. He's out on a job right now clearing out a road. But there's some ordinance that he's violating, and he's got 15 days to get it sorted. And I get it. It's just the way it is, and it's checks and balances. But he was not in a great mindset of just mad, seeing red, and I had to, talk him back. Be like, look, dude, there's nothing you can do. We're going to do this anyways. I've been looking for you a lot anyways, trying to find a place for you to put the shit. I said, it's something that was already on the agenda. Nothing is going to change. You don't have to do a single thing different. Now you have a bit of a top line. Now you need to do it in 15 days. I was like, but you got plenty of money to solve the problem, and you have a grumpy-ass neighbor. I was like, crank the dually up a little earlier next morning for the next couple of weeks. Who gives a shit, If you want to get a little revenge, crank them up in the morning. They can't do nothing about that, But short of that, let it be. And get him to kind of to separate his emotions from the business. Because it's very easy to take offense and feel attacked and so forth. And that's where I'm going to pass that over to you because that's where you're a bit more versed at that than I am.
Well, and when you told me the story, I remember seeing a couple of LinkedIn posts talking about, mental health in the entrepreneurial community, founders, and I mean, it's no secret that entrepreneurs and small business owners, have to undergo a tremendous amount of, long working hours, stress, from every direction. There's a reason they say that entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And it really is not, because, if it was really that easy, there would be far more successful entrepreneurs out there than they actually are, right? And so, but I think that, I could see where he's upset and he's angry because this isn't him bringing in Corvettes or, putting a child's playground in his front yard or something. Like, this is his livelihood. This is how he puts food on his table. This is how he puts a roof over his head. And I think you shared with me that he was at the point of wanting to literally just, go and have a conversation with that individual, to say the least, right? And so, I think that first and foremost, ultimately, we as people, it's hard for us to separate ourselves from our business because, and this also is applicable if you're not in business, if you're at work, if you're a parent, but it is difficult for most of us to separate ourselves from business, from career, from life, from marriage. But the truth of the matter is that if you're going to have any hopes of retaining some amount of sanity, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to learn to compartmentalize or to separate yourself from the business. And I would go as far as saying, and I found this out in my corporate career. This is really where I learned this, that, you can still be passionate about your business and what you're doing and entrepreneurship. You can still be passionate about what you dedicate your life to. But, there will be times where things aren't going to go well. Things are going to happen. Things are going to be challenged. Conflicts are going to arise. You have to understand that you just can't put your self-worth on a business or any other type of external type of undertaking. And so the reality is that you have to be able to separate yourself and know, look, I think you mentioned this. This is his business. The neighbor complained. They're a piece of shit, but they're within their right as a citizen. Apparently, he is violating some kind of city code. He's being given the opportunity to correct it, thankfully, and nobody's coming in and towing his dually away. So, you got to take stock of what you've got right now and just, learn to kind of let that stuff roll off your back. There's really no other way of
That's it. Completely. I mean, he spent the morning, and for context, it's 5:00 p.m. my time. The last time I talked to him was about 2:00. I guarantee you he's been massively unproductive all day because he's in his head. I mean, he has another $500,000 job to go do next week that he needs to be worried about today, but he's so tied up in the mindset of, and he's a young guy. He's like 26. So, he's not, it would be hard I've run into it myself at the ripe old age of 42. I take offense to things. If somebody doesn't like something I say or something I do, I'm a bit more hard-edged now than I used to be, but, I'm sure you react,
Of course, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think I've come a long way from my younger days, of course, but, we're not impervious to stuff that happens. I'll give you a great example. We had a company where, unfortunately, a client, I should say, that we'd had a falling out with, who was refusing to pay us, and things went the legal route. And next thing you know, I'm getting a call from my client. Now, mind you, like most of us, I put my heart and soul into what I do. It's not just revenue, it's not just income, it's a craft, right? Like, we are doing something that we love to do. And I feel like I bend over backwards, coming from a customer service background. I bend over backwards for my client. So to have a client come on the phone and tell me that they are going to proceed with suing me for fraud, and they're going to proceed, and they're like, even if we're going to sue you and Cultastic, you won't be protected as an individual. We're going to come after your personal assets and all that. I mean, at a certain point now, it's like, wow, now I've got somebody who is essentially threatening me and my family, because we all live in the same roof, right? Who's coming after me. And, I spoke to, our legal counsel, and they're like, look, they don't have grounds to do that. They're just, they're talking shit. Like, there's no way they're gonna be able to, like, don't take this, don't take it personally. I'm like, you're not taking it personally. He called me, right? And I already am an anxious person as it. I've been all my entire life, but I got to tell you, that was like, I just had a feeling in the pit of my stomach for days and days and days on end. I think there was a feeling of betrayal from that client, because it's like, you went from, they love you and they're so appreciative of you and you give them everything, and then they turn around and this is what happens. So there was a certain level of betrayal that I perceived from that. And again, my sense of like, where did I fail? How could I let myself fail? All those things go through your head. And this will happen, to all of our entrepreneurs. And so I think that what's important, there's a few things that we need to do as entrepreneurs and leaders to help us navigate through those challenges when, you have either a client or a neighbor who is, filing a complaint against you, or whether they want to sue you, or you have this individual who's threatened me or coming after me, or even as a general mindset, if, you lost your job, you broke up with someone. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you have to start with separating your self-worth from the business. So that's number one tip, is how do you do that, Leo? Look, at the end of the day, it's all about you recognizing that all of your skill, all of your life experience, and that everything that makes up who you are doesn't solely come from one place, and that the business is just one aspect of your life, and it does not take everything. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree wholeheartedly. I take probably a very similar approach, but I look at the people a bit differently. Like, if somebody's complaining about something that I know is acceptable or is good, they're a miserable fuck. And they're not, it doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to be satisfied. And I'll try to rationalize that in my head of, that's how I understand this. It may not be accurate, but, we see, I work with a lot of restaurants, so I've literally seen reviews pop up from the exact same lady that literally is almost verbatim the same review for like 8 different restaurants that we work with in the area, and she complains about everything. Nothing's good. Nothing's acceptable. I know these restaurants. I know they do a good job I know their food tastes good. They're clean. I know these things. So when you look at when one of those isolated business owners sees that review, they're like, well, what happened Friday night? And they may even go to their staff and go, why is this lady saying this? And they don't have the global picture that I do, because I'm seeing all the reviews, because I manage all their accounts. And I see this same lady on all of them. Once you know that part of it, it totally devalues the singular review. And, most people are just miserable that are in that way. Or in your situation, it had nothing to do with you. I guarantee you it was just piss poor financial management. And they just simply didn't have the money to pay you. And instead of saying to you that I can't manage money well, so I'm sorry I can't afford to pay you, I'm going to screw you over, instead of being honest and saying that, they find excuses to justify why they're not paying. Because it makes them feel better.
I mean, sadly, in business and in life, obviously, you are going to come across these individuals, this review troll that you came across, this individual who, for whatever reasons, is essentially just trying to weasel their way out of things. And there's people who thrive on doing this. It's like, oh, hi, I saved my company so much by screwing over this vendor, or not paying these vendors, or whatever, and it's great that they do this. And it's like, again, at the end of the day, I know it's hard to separate ourselves from what we do as entrepreneurs and as leaders, because it's our output, it's our craft, it's our love. But the way you separate yourself from it is simply taking a step back and knowing that, again, first and foremost, your self-worth should not be dictated by that bad review. Right? Which this lady is probably a minority. I'm sure they have better, reviews, or the majority of their reviews are reasonable or good. But of course, we always tend to focus on the negative as humans.
Oh yeah, they'll get, and he'll get the one of the business owners. The one that I know that actually took offense to this particular review had like 56 reviews that week. He didn't celebrate the 56. He focused on the one negative. And
on the one. And I mean, and that's our, within our nature, sadly, is we kind of tend to look at that. With this client, I'm talking about him, and it's traumatizing to go through that. But I have clients that I can tell you I've forgotten, that have been grateful. I've worked with employees that have gone on, or who remember me, or tell me how much of an impact I had on their life. And then, of course, all that goes out the window. So, at the end of the day, the business is a part of us, but it is not the be-all, end-all. And you can be ambitious, you can be invested and passionate about what you're doing, but without you letting that dictate how you feel about who you are as an individual. The other thing that I wanted to jump into is something that, unfortunately, your friend didn't do very well, and it kind of bit him in the ass. And so one of the things that can help with our founders' mindset and kind of balancing the business and ourselves as individuals is to create a boundary of personal space between the business and our personal lives. Now, I know, hold on, I know everybody's going to say, well, like, I have a home, I mean, I'm in a home office, right? I've got guitars here, like, you know, you can't extricate everything. But the reality is that in certain ways, you have to find ways to create this boundary, whether it's physical or emotional, between you and the business. So in this case, your friend's got his work trucks at his home, right? So, you know, and that's not uncommon, obviously. I mean, I've seen folks that do that all the time, but I guess in his case, you know, it kind of bit him in the ass. So try to find a way of protecting, or, you know, your personal space and time, whether it's physically or whether it's emotionally, having boundaries between the business and you. So maybe you have a device that you don't use for business, or maybe you reserve a space in your home where, you know, and I know, Trevor, you hated this idea, but the fact of having a place in your business where you're like, this is a business-free zone in my den or in my recliner. I will talk about everything but my business. There's definitely creating boundaries, right?
Okay. Yeah, I that would be hard. I mean, my life is not the normal life, you know. I'm a single dad to a daughter that's 10 years old, and I work all the time and run businesses. So it's between homeschool and business, it's always chaos. So I can't imagine saying I'm not going to take a phone call or check an email or something in my bedroom. It would be just a very big challenge for me. But I do see the value in it, and I see the value in, actually for me, I think that boundary would be more apt to be a time-centric boundary rather than a physicality one of a location of a location in my house, but more of a at 7 o'clock I'm doing no more business type thing. That would probably do better for my mindset, to be fair.
Well, and that's related to the other point, which we are always under pressure to be on as entrepreneurs and founders of companies and leaders. You're always on. There's no off. You know, travel, wherever, work, whatever you're doing, you're always on, you're always there, you're always available. And I think, you know, that's just not healthy in the long term,
No.
right? So, you know, that's going to take a psychological toll on you. So, you know, you don't have to completely segregate business and personal all of a sudden. I think, you know, when you're trying to work towards a goal, you take small steps. I'll give you an example. So typically my morning coffee and sitting in front of my phone was looking at my meetings for the day, looking at my emails, checking my messages, LinkedIn, whatnot, and which is basically part of the workday. What I started doing, this is probably maybe even 2-3 weeks now, is I read this article that Jeff Bezos does this, so I don't know how true this is, but basically that first hour is no business time. Now, I can read the news. You know, I can watch videos. I can do anything except check my email. I mean, I'll check my calendar to make sure I'm not going to miss a meeting, but otherwise, I'm not checking email. I'm not taking my messages, what's up, what not, what have you, texts. I am going into my Google News. I am looking at my articles and content. You know, I have Imprint, which is an app for learning. I use that. And so maybe tops 2 hours a day, I try to create a space for something that involves me as an individual and not the business, which usually almost always is such a big part of my life. So I think to your point, you can start creating some of these boundaries with time, separating time, right, of where we dedicate, rather than, you know, taking your office outside, your home office out to a co-working space or whatever.
Yep.
Right.
That makes sense. Do you have an action item? I know you had some ideas for an action item, and this is such an abstract kind of concept. I was at a loss for the action item for this one. What do you have?
Yeah. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you, and we'll post a simple exercise that you can do to help you with this concept of getting any failures or conflicts or things that affect the business and being able to separate yourself from that. And there's a couple of things that you can do in terms of affirmations or self-reflection or thought. It's not going to be super metaphysical. I'm not going to have you burning incense and whatnot. But, although that's a good thing if you want to sit there and chill, because that is also helpful too. But something that, we'll put together a couple of exercises that you can start with to help you, especially, again, when you're dealing with situations that are highly impactful, that are ultimately affecting you, emotionally, that are affecting the business. So, and again, as business owners, we have them, obviously. So especially when we rely on our businesses for our well-being and our finances. So we will get that up on the website as well.
Yep, I'll put it on the when you get done with it, shoot it over, and I'll put it on it'll be on the resources tab on the website. And I'll also put a link in the description to it.
As always, find us on the actionitempodcast.com. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or topic submissions, or just want to share your comments on today's episode. Once again, it's the actionitempodcast.com. Thanks for joining us today. Until next week.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.